Hello and welcome to Girl Awakening YouTube. I'm Jo Hendy.
And I'm Amanda Parker. Enjoy this episode of Girl Awakening in all of its vulnerable sacredness.
And remember to subscribe and share.
Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning. Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful day today. The sun's shining, thank God.
And it's a Monday.
Yeah.
Which is so perfect for our guest, who our listeners will know. She has been on many times because we always get a hold of her when shit's going down.
Yes. Bit of cosmic interpretation. Yeah, like I think at the moment, like, there's a need for some very clear communication around things. And we've had Emma on many, many times sharing like the astrology of the times. And we're going to go with some of that. Also a bit of what is it called? It's not a dark night of the soul, but it's definitely that upside down, sideways, inside out of the soul that I think many of us are feeling in different ways. And, you know, the three of us are no exception to that. And we're going to have a little bit of fun of just bringing through some higher communications that our girl has been, you know, working with as well, which is a part of her journey that we're going to sort of dive in today. So watch this space.
Yeah,
that Emily's moving into. I think she's bringing through something pretty special on behalf of the collective. So welcome today, Em. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, beautiful women. It's always a pleasure to be back here and in your company.
Yeah. It's I think this podcast will be a great one to sit somewhere in stillness, like on the beach or somewhere, and just like allow the frequency and the communication to come in and settle in within. That's the feeling that I get.
What the words, because the words are just, you know, there's so much power to our words always. But now the way that we actually hear a word, see a word, and act out a word just seems to carry so much different frequency and filters and things like that. So yeah, how's it been with you, Emma, and life in the astrological zone?
Oh, it has been wild. Like, I'm actually I can't even remember, when was the last time that I came on? Was that, have we been on since 2024, or was that the end of last year?
Wow, yeah.
That's a good question.
That's a great question. I think it might have even been last year.
I think so too. And to be honest, it actually doesn't feel like that long, but it also feels like lifetimes. Like, it's this weird like timeline. I can't even tell you how crazy timelines are right now. It's just like, I think of like last year, and like it actually feels like that was 3 years ago, but at the same time, it also feels like it was like yesterday. Like, it's just, I feel like that's where the energies have really been for us right now. And so for me personally, I have gone through a million different periods of growth and cycles of growth, from even when I spoke to you last to now, and constantly just this, like, I feel like, and I know we were just saying this before, Jo, around, you feel like you're just on top of something and you feel like you're coming through it, and then all of a sudden it's like you get pulled back down, and it's like, hold on a second, there's still more to learn here, there's still more evolution, and it's like this constant cycle. So the energies have been very, very intense, and it's been you know, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people. We've been going through the ringer with what's been happening on our planet here and our collective evolution and our consciousness. It's been big, and I don't think we realize the grand scheme of how big it actually has been. You know, some people are obviously feeling it a lot more personally, and some people kind of, you know, they may be a little bit disconnected to what's going on, or they might just sort of be like, oh yeah, I kind of feel something, but it's not anything cray-cray. But for some of us, and especially those of us who are really tapped in and quite in tune with our energies, it's been phenomenal. Like, it's been this portal that I think everything is just speeding up. Timelines are shifting, timelines are changing. It's just phenomenal, the growth that has happened. So I feel like, there's a lot to unpack with that. But for me personally, it's just meant like a time of coming back, I had to pull myself out of my business. I had to pull myself out of social media. I just had to come within and just kind of be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what is actually this? Like, what am I working towards right now? And I feel like everything is just like constantly shifting and changing. And it's like just being pulled back to the present moment. And you just have to go with what's in front of you right now. I feel like, you know, as an astrologer, I think this is a blessing and a curse, is that I can look into things and forecast and see what's ahead. But at the same time, I feel like I can sometimes get caught up in that and kind of be like, oh, well, you know, I know this is happening and this is coming, but I can't actually be present in the moment of what the energy is feeling for me right now. And I really had to catch myself to come back to that present moment, because I feel like it was a lot, like, yeah, all this timeline hopping and getting caught up in all of this, like, you know, this energy is meant to feel good, it's doing this, but I was actually feeling the opposite. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me as an astrologer? If I'm interpreting is actually not what I'm feeling. And it really just made me have a good hard look around. Like, it comes back to the embodiment and being present with what's actually in front of you. And, you know, as much as I knew that the energies, I guess, you know, there's always a higher expression and a lower expression. And sometimes, you know, there's that awareness piece of, are you sitting in that higher expression, or are you playing back and sitting in that lower expression of that energy? And for me, I kind of found myself a little bit in some of the lower aspects. And that was kind of confronting, to be like, well, I should be this person that should be in the higher expression because I know this, right? And so it was a really interesting time of having to just come back and just kind of give myself a bit of a check and be like, actually, you kind of been playing down here and you need to be at this higher expression. Well, not need to be, but you're wanting to be at that higher expression, and, you know, what needs to shift and change in order for that to happen. And for me, it was all about coming back to presence and present moment and not escaping myself, not escaping my reality, and just being present with whatever it was that I was feeling in this moment. And that, I think, is, yeah, where I'm at.
Yeah, no,
That's the key.
That's the key. And just for our listeners too, around the higher and lower aspects that you were talking about, because I feel myself in that area too. We were literally just talking about that before we got on today. For our listeners, it's almost like a feeling like you've gone backwards 5 or 10 years, and you start to beat up on yourself, you know, and like, oh, I know this, I shouldn't be here. But it's almost like allowing yourself to be there, because there is something for you. There's an opportunity for you to change something that you may have missed in those previous, you know, times, and being okay to be there for that moment. And so I'm totally hearing what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when we're looking at like Pluto, for instance, how much that's had a massive effect on everything being our outer planet, and, you know, the one that's really shifting the collective consciousness into this kind of new earth frequencies, is that we're really having to have a good hard look at the things that have always been under the surface that we potentially just were blind to before, or we couldn't see. And so now, with all of these Pluto activations that we've experienced so far this year, it's bringing all that up to the surface for us to kind of be like, oh, wow, okay, I thought I was, you know, at this high expression, but turns out I was actually here because I was blinded to that, or I just didn't have that full, I guess, vision of what it actually meant to see everything as it is. And I guess, yeah, it's been really interesting. And yeah, so much of what you said around, like, you know, those repeated loops or things that have been consistently like coming up, and then you're kind of like, I thought I dealt with this. I thought this was like something that I was dealing with, like, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, whatever it might be. And it's still coming up for the surface to be like, actually, there's still just another layer. And I guess that's kind of, you know, the growth and healing.
I was gonna say too, maybe that we're at, because it's those things are coming up, we have grown. Like, there's no denying that we have shifted and evolved and all of that, and we've learned so much. But we had to get to that place to be able to shine the light on those little hidden pieces, because we're now in a place where we can maybe observe them instead of falling into them.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I totally agree with that. And yeah, it's just really where, I guess, we're all kind of evolving. And, you know, we do need to kind of lighten the baggage and lighten the load. Like, if we want to create this new earth frequency and step into that, like, we actually can't take all of this heavy baggage that we've, you know, had this backpack on for so long. And it's like, no, we've got to actually start to, you know, go through the backpack and say, like, is this actually something we want to take forward, or is this something we've got to throw out and leave behind? And I think that's also been very, very apparent, is that I don't think we realized how heavy our backpacks have gotten. How tired we are of carrying all of that with us. And so it's been a time of really just, you know, coming back and clearing out. And, you know, eclipse season was definitely that point for me as well, back in April with Mercury retrograde. And, like, you know, we can talk about that as well, but that was a massive time in the scheme of all of this and where we're moving towards, and coming back into our own power, our own sovereignty, and really just being like, okay, what is it that we're shedding and releasing, and how can we then come back to our truth? Like, what is actually in that backpack that's not aligning to our truth anymore, or it's stopping us or blocking us from actually sharing our truth with others as well. So yeah, it's gonna
Oh, huge. Yeah. Because we've had because we have like people booked for months in advance with the Girl Awakening, and there's been a
plethora.
Yeah, I'd say a handful of people who just have had to reschedule because of, like you said, that eclipse. And you can say, oh, don't blame it on the moon, woo woo, that sort of thing. But the energies, the frequencies, our relationship to our environment and what's happening around us, this is all real shit. This is our quantum life in being embodied in a human cell. Yeah, cells.
Yeah.
But and these people are like, a lot of them are really highly skilled, energy workers, all these kind of things, and it's just been overwhelming for them where they've been taken out or experiencing what they've been experiencing and trying to come out the other side, and hearts have been like cardiac arrest. Not some people physically, but energetically, it's like it's a real transition time, and it's a lot going on in all the areas of life that you can think of, and yet we're moving forward, and most people still in that situation feel like they're moving forward, but yet there's this seeing things from a different perspective that is shining a new light on what's just been sitting there under the carpet or sitting there in a back pocket or the backpack, and it's, I think that's listening to you, I was fully getting that transition between the Pluto and Capricorn into Pluto and Aquarius, because Capricorn is that structural, capitalistic, authoritarian kind of control, holding it all together, and Aquarian is the the rebel, freedom fighter, some detachment, seeing things from an observational point of view. So it gives you that the capacity to be able to change your glasses and see things a different way. I was like really very visual the way that you were describing.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I was just remembering then when we were talking about the last time that we sat together, I think we might have been been talking about these times we're in now.
So before coming.
The massive shift that was occurring in April, I think it was,
Yep.
So look at us. We're now beyond that, and we have felt
coming out to solstice, which is another time. So, do you want to share a little bit around that, like that April eclipse?
Yeah,
because I think people are still unpacking that.
So we officially started that eclipse season at the end of March. So when we had that full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. Right. So this is actually important to look at that, because that's where things really started to shift and change for this whole perspective. And I'll bring it and I'll tie it in all together around how that all actually fits and works. So it all comes back to, if we even just remember back on to the 21st of April, where we had that Jupiter and Uranus conjunction in Taurus, which was our biggest transit of 2024, right? And so when we're looking at that, we can't just say yes, that happened directly on that day, but there's a build-up phase to that. And that build-up phase really started to begin as we started an opened eclipse season. And the reason for that is that we look at, in astrology, we look at planets that are overseeing and ruling other planetary alignments and conjunctions. And so because that conjunction happened in Taurus is naturally ruled by Venus. So anything that happens in the sign of Taurus, Venus oversees that, right? So she holds power over that conjunction. And so the reason that that's important is because Libra is also ruled by Venus. And when we had that Libra eclipse, that was actually the starting point of what things needed to be released and what was starting to fall away and crumbling. And that was a South Node eclipse as well. So it was a very purging time to kind of really have that hard look and really go through and start to unpack what's in that backpack, right? And so because Venus held that power, she has been, probably the most powerful planet in the sky, I'd say, for the last 12 to even 24 months, because she also ruled the Taurus lunar eclipse, solar lunar eclipses of the last eclipse season that we had for the last 18 months prior to that as well. So we've been in this building up phase. And so that's the thing with astrology. And when we have these bigger transits, we can't just look at it from that day, right? Yes, you might have had some things happen on that day of the 21st or, you know, leading up or what have you. But we also have to look at it from what's built up to that point. And so that was the start. So that Libra full moon eclipse. And so that really asked us to kind of come away, and that Libra South node really wants us to kind of come away from that people pleasing and letting go of all of that, right? And Venus is the ruler of that. So she really is what rules our relationships and our connections and our money and our finances. She's quite multifaceted. And so that was our opportunity to kind of really have that good hard look around, like what needs to be released, where are we holding ourselves back, and being stuck in that people pleasing and or not being in our own power, which is where we wanted to then evolve into that North Node energy in Aries. And so then that was that second eclipse that we had. So in this eclipse cycle, we had 2 eclipses. So we had that first one in Libra as a full moon lunar eclipse, and then we had that Aries solar eclipse. And then that was also massive as well, because that actually involved Chiron, and Chiron is our wounded healer and is going to bring up things from the surface. And that actually was super, super rare that that solar eclipse happened directly on top of Chiron as well. So there was lots of wounds and things being triggered, lots of past life stuff in order for us to face, to come back to our truth and own our power and reclaim our power. So that was eclipse season. And then throw in also a Mercury retrograde into that. That's like, you know, hey, let's just really get these guys cooking. Come back and be forced to slow down and sit in your shit and really reflect and review and slow down, because, you know, everyone kind of thought that this solar eclipse in Aries was going to be like, yeah, this is where things start to kick off and it's going to be great. But everyone didn't really also look at the fact that Mercury was still in retrograde and that Mars was actually lagging behind and not even in Aries yet. And so things were just really kind of slow. Like, I don't know about you, but Aries season in April felt like it went for fucking months. Like that time, there was a lot to be in, right?
Yeah.
I think for me personally, I knew that I should have probably slowed down, but I didn't. Yeah. And so this is what wiped me out in May, and not having that time. I think we had an opportunity. If you took that opportunity to really slow down and to be in that and to really work through that, then, you know, you probably would have been more rewarded in May. Whereas I was sort of like, I don't know, it was weird. Like, and this comes back to that embodiment and being present with what you're, you know, is coming up for you. And like, I probably did have the warning signs to, like, you know, just back it off, slow down. But I was sort of like, no, I'm actually fine. I feel good, like whatever. I didn't listen.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, you know, the saying of like the universe throws the little pebble and it's like, hey, and then it throws the rock. And then if you don't notice, then it'll throw the brick. And so I think I got in at the rock point. I don't think I got to the brick. So
Okay.
yeah. And so that was April, right? And then we kind of came out of that, and we did start to notice the shift as soon as we went into Taurus season. But then in and amongst that April point, we then had that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which really like kind of was that reset point. But I think it's still, because those planets are outer planets, we always thought, and a lot of astrologers, and I probably was a bit guilty of this, is like, it's that quantum leap, like it's going to happen now. But in reality, they're slower moving planets. It's in the slow sign of Taurus. And it's just like we're seeding those things for, yes, the quantum leap, but it's not going to happen immediately. And I think that's what everyone, and that's, I guess, the other thing is like on social media and pop astrologers and things are always kind of like, oh, you know, it's going to be this most magical day. And it's like such a day and, you know, all your dreams and wishes are going to come true. But reality is like, how often does that actually happen like that? You know, for some people, sure, it might. But for others, it's like you're planting that seed of intention. And then knowing that at any moment in time later, that there's when the quick transformations and the quantum leaps can happen. And so I think like hindsight now reflecting on this, it's actually been really good for myself, because I was definitely caught up in that, being like, I'm going to quantum leap and I'm going to do all this, but then didn't allow myself the time or the space of what is required for a quantum leap, you know, to actually integrate, to slow down, to, you know, slow down, to speed up. And so then that's where after that conjunction happened, I was like, shit, that just wiped me. And then that's when I, you know, had to take those few weeks off business, social media. And like, even now I've just come back onto social media, I think a week or a bit ago, and I'm still just kind of like, everything has just changed. And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm here to talk about now. It's just like, I still need to just sit with this and be like, okay, what is the next iteration of me? And the other thing, and I guess this is what really ties this in too, as all of this is happening and right now in the sky, Venus has become invisible, right? And so what this means is she's actually because she's quite close to the sun and she's about to go through her superior conjunction in June. Now, as I mentioned before, this is where it kind of all ties in. Venus ruled that Libra eclipse. Then we come into May, right? She also oversaw that, or sorry, back to April, that Uranus-Jupiter conjunction. And then she ruled that. And then she also ruled Taurus season, right? She ruled the Taurus new moon. And then she was heavily involved with this Sagittarius full moon that we just had, where Jupiter and Venus were both together. But all around this whole time, she's actually been invisible in the sky because she's transitioning from her morning star into her evening star phase. And so this, for me, like when this actually just dropped, this only dropped in for me a couple of days ago. I was like, fuck, this is why, for me, I feel like the magnetism and like everything hasn't quite attracted or landed yet, because Venus, who holds all this power, is invisible. No one is getting her access to her energy right now. And that's going to change as we move into the other side of solstice and into, I think it's mid-July, where she becomes visible as the evening star. So when we look out just before sun, or just as the sun's setting, you'll see that Venus is going to pop back up, and that will be in mid-July. So that's actually really important. And not many astrologers are talking about this. Right. And so now that I've really kind of sat with them and been like, fuck, this actually makes so much sense, why we're all still feeling that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still feeling that really internal, like I can't emerge from the chrysalis just yet. And I think the more, and this has like been really interesting because I'm about to go through, I guess a kind of a Venus return point as Venus goes through her next, she works in the point of 5 stars, right? And so she has 18 months for her retrograde cycles and things like that, but she actually has an 8-year cycle. And so I'm about to go through a next 8-year cycle next year, when Venus then becomes her purifying point through Aries. And so that, for me, I've got my Venus in Aries. So I was like, this is why I'm like tuning so much into her energy and how much she's actually holding power. Because when we look at even back in, you know, ancient times, they actually revered Venus as like, she was the divine feminine, and they were very strongly tracking her in the sky. And so I think she's kind of lost her power, and the fact that we don't often talk as much about her because the moon kind of is what we more focus on.
Yes.
But Venus is actually, she's the divine feminine. So yes, like Mother Moon is like that mother emotional body kind of energy, but Venus is the divine feminine, and she actually is so much more potent than what we give her credit for. And she has an amazing, fascinating cycle, which I'm going to be diving so much more into, because it's just amazing to see how she goes through this ebb and flow into the underworld. And right now she's kind of in her underworld phase, right? Which is that internal time of coming back to self, coming back to the truth of your heart, your being in that divine feminine flow and surrender, and not knowing, being in that unknown. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm like, holy shit, this just fully aligns with this whole Venus cycle. And I'm just like, mind blown.
Yes.
And I think it's also what you're saying around that embodiment as well, like where we're at the moment, is that full on, like that going within and the embodiment of all the things, and not trying to have it all sitting up here, you know, in the mind, and, you know, in a logical kind of portal of things. Like it has to be integrated in all the ways. And that's why, you know, like they talk about this being an 8-year, which I think is also in resonance with Venus as well.
Yeah, she runs on an 8-year cycle.
8-year cycle, yeah. So that
very,
physical body is very much a big part of this year's energy as well, isn't it? So the whole, you know, feeling the things is a big part of the process, and how we support ourselves with nourishing and nurturing those feelings, and moving it through our system, not holding it in our system, and, you know,
and going with what's needed, like going with what you feel. Like if it is staying at home, not having to, you know, force yourself to do the things that you know your body or yourself doesn't need right now.
Or the people pleasing aspect of that. So investing in yourself in all the ways, like with, you know, beautiful food, you know, and, you know, when I say beautiful food, I mean it can be a piece of carrot sliced up with thought and intention, and enjoying that carrot and, you know, what it's offering you. It doesn't need to be, you know, all those, you know, but just
it's almost coming back to that simple, like simplicity and the simple pleasures that are available to us as well. Which is very Taurian, I guess, is that coming back to those simple earthly pleasures that we often overlook sometimes, or, you know, we kind of want to chase something bigger than just being in that mundane present moment. Like that's where the magic really is, when we come back to that. And I think that was a massive reminder for me, was like, holy shit, like there's just so much right now that's like right here in front of me that I've kind of been like, you know, too busy trying to look at this future thing and building this and building an empire and, you know, all this stuff that I forgot to come back to like what is right in front of me right now. And, you know, I've got children and I've got children that are growing up every single day. And it's like, when you're not able to, I got to the point where I was coming back to, I couldn't actually, I was so torn, like, and I felt like this was like this siphon of my business or, you know, attaching everything to that and social media that was constantly like pulling my energy away, that I would be like playing with my daughter being like, oh, I actually just forgot I need to do this post, or, you know, whatever it was. But then it took me away from that moment of being with my daughter or my son. And it's like, holy shit, like that for me, I was like, that has to just stop. I need to cut that cord. And it's been really interesting how much my energy shifted when I did that, and how I was just able to come back to that presence and just appreciate beauty, nature, just being outside, the sun on your skin, like just those little things that you just that were happening, but you weren't bringing your present awareness towards it.
And it's funny, there is a lot of like negative energy fields, that's what I like to call them, that are around that want to seduce us into staying the same, which is like even the negative pull of social media or anything but being in stillness and simplicity. It's very enticing, and it's smart and it's cunning. This is the thing that I've been noticing. This negative energy field that's constantly at play, that does not want us to be free or still. And anything that's not that is the negative energy field. And so when you start to understand that more, you can see how fucking potent and how much we have been playing and allowing that negative energy field to come and take us over. It's just been crazy. That's the one thing I've been noticing, just the pull of that, and the pull of social media, the pull of having to be busy, the pull of, and just hearing you say, you know, with young kids, or and I've got grown-up kids, and it's even, it doesn't matter whether they're little or they're grown up, they still need that love and that attention and that to be seen and to be heard, and to show them that, okay, it's not about all of those other things, you know.
What I just hear when you're saying that as well is, again, another Venus aspect of where we're feeling most valued. And like, you know, really like what we're talking, like a time with our children, or time in nature in the sunshine, or, you know, where we're rewarding ourselves and giving ourselves back sense of self. Or is it, you know, seeing ourselves reflected in a post on Instagram, or, you know, making sure we comment on these things, or
this fake self, this illusion. It's almost like an AI, you know.
That's quite big. That's, you know, that also ties into that Pluto and Aquarius energy, where that can be the shadow and the dystopian, like instead of us coming together in community and for the collective, it's this shadow dystopian, like disconnection and not wanting to, you know, actually physically connect in the way that we are, you know, designed to connect. We're physical beings, right? We crave that physical connection. And this is also probably a great segue to talk about that Jupiter has just moved into Gemini as of Sunday. So yesterday, what was that, Sunday the 26th? And so that is then going to really, that's a start of another 12-year cycle. And so Jupiter in Gemini is going to be around for 12 months. And so when we look at that, that's all around our social media, our connection, our, you know, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is the messenger, and how we communicate, how we are, what message are we sharing, what information are we diving into? And Jupiter here is going to expand all of that. So that can mean that we've got all this stuff happening in the mind, but then it can also mean that we are craving more physical human connection. And I think we're going to see a lot of shifts and change in the way we do social media. And I don't know about you, but I've obviously gone through that personally myself, even before that just energy has happened. But I know that there's so many people that are kind of just like, you know what, I'm done with building business on social media. Or I've the amount of posts that I've seen of people just going, hey, I'm out, I can't do this, my energy, it's too much. I think we're going to see a lot of shifts and changes in the way people are showing up on social media, and then even the information that you're receiving, and looking at that, like, is that, it's all about coming back to that truth. Like, is this information that I'm reading, is it truth? Is it coming from the right intention? And I guess that's the same, tying that into the Venus thing as well, is it's the values, and, you know, is that something that is heart-centered truth and values and resonates with me? Or is that just something that is just, you know, collective noise? That's the other thing. And that's what we're going to be really sitting in for the next 12 months. So that's,
I think it's already been sneaking in, because so many times in the last month, I'll say, like, had conversations with people and friendship groups and business and things like that, where it's about, you know, staying in authenticity. But, you know, you're being told that, you know, you have to post so many times and this and that, otherwise you're not even featuring in the algorithm, or people won't find you, or what you've already posted isn't holding any weight and things like that. And I'm just like, fuck that. I just want to be able to share things that are of value. And if people find it and see it, great. And I hope that they contribute or recognize it, or they're not going, oh, it's only got 3 likes, so I won't like it because, you know, it's obviously not popular, or, you know, you know, it's like waiting for people to make up their own minds around social media and have it be something that really does work for us in a way that we can share to a wider audience. Yeah, but, you know, just think for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, we've got this infiltration of AI, right?
Yeah.
And how many things do you see on? I mean, like, yes, I've had a play with ChatGPT, and it does some pretty cool stuff. But at the end of the day, like when I'm doing like my horoscopes and things, it's terrible. Like I wanted to see how much it would actually come out and say, like, with what's happening in the week of the stars. It was terrible. I was like, it actually misinformation. It's actually not factually correct. And I think a lot of people are just kind of thinking that, you know, I'm sure as it evolves, like, sure, it might become better. And I'm sure there will be a positive that comes out of that. I do believe that, you know, there is that higher aspect of it. And for some people, it will be helpful or what have you. But it's been really interesting because I was kind of along the things of like, oh, I'm not touching that. I'm not going there. That's just too much. But then I did have a play with it, but I was like, oh, actually, yeah, this is, it's not for me right now, but I've definitely like played around with a few things with it and to see what it comes out and says. But then I look on social media and I can just see, I'm like, that's just AI. Like, you know, that's not you. That's not the energy. Or there's so much of that. And I think that's where I really had to pull my energy back, because I was just trying to compare myself with all these people that are, you know, putting out this stuff or what have you. And I'm like, how the fuck are they getting it out so quick and this and that? Whereas like if I wanted to sit and write an email, like with my weekly horoscopes, like people don't actually realize that actually takes me like 2 or 3 hours to look at the whole energies of the week, sit down, get my creative juices to actually then flow and create that. And I think one thing that I really noticed was that people just either weren't valuing it or understanding the work that actually goes into that, because there are a lot of people that will just put that through ChatGPT, and sure, it will come out with some stuff, but it's never going to come back to what my truth is and my frequency that I resonate with that either. And so that was a really interesting thing to kind of come in back to, because I was like, you know, how are all these people getting all this shit out? Like, that's a lot of work. And I started to realize, like, okay, that's artificial intelligence. And I was like, sure, it has its place, but I think Jupiter and Gemini is going to reiterate the fact that human connection is going to always win over that. We're always going to come back to, you know, whether that's that in-person conversation or, you know, what we're doing right now, connecting over video. That's always going to be better than like texting or, you know, emails or what have you. Like, it's always going to come back that we are beings of physical connection, that has to
be real. Right. And I think this is where, like, you know, AI and ChatGPT, you know, seeing it more as a thesaurus, like, you know, when we look for, okay, I'm trying to think of a word. What's the word? I'm going to look in this.
It's definitely great to help you with ideas and, you know, get the ball rolling and
something. But yeah, it is not of, you know, as Jo was just saying, and what you're just saying, it's not of your essence. It's not of your viewpoint, your interpretation of what you are personally, authentically wanting to share with the world. And I'm excited for what AI has to offer us in a human context. But it will never, well, you know, I'm going to say it will never be a sentient being as we are. But, you know,
well, what we do is when we're communicating with each other from that authentic space, is we're creating expansion in ourselves. Then find more of who we are. And I don't think we could get that from AI. I think it comes from the collective.
100%. So that was
So Jupiter and Gemini is bringing a lot. For me, I hear that like, you know, multidimensionality expansion as well, like, you know, like
dualities.
Wow. So where are we at now, Em? Where are we sitting now? I know we've talked about, you know, some of the things that have been happening and just recently, and even as close as yesterday. Can we expand a little bit more on that? What we want to now?
So the way I kind of see like this year and say even next year is we are on the cusp of like a precipice of like, it's the beginning, but it's the end. And we're on this like closing out, but also the new doors are opening, but then we're still having to close out a few things. And the reason for that is so next year is actually going to be a massive year in terms of shifts and changes, because we're going to have Uranus briefly come into Gemini, which again hasn't happened for 84 years. We are going to have Neptune enter Aries, leaving Pisces where she's exalted. So that's going to throw in a whole new flavor of energy. Then we're going to have Jupiter then move into Cancer mid next year. So that's going to, again, shift a lot of things. We're going to have Pluto be fully in Aquarius now for the next 22 years, I think it is. And so that is all about like endings, but then also completions. And then because a few of these planets are still going to retrograde over that last degree point of endings and completions, as we're in right now with this Pluto doing its last little final retrograde into Capricorn at 29 degrees to really close that whole chapter and cycle off. It's really like this, closing, but then the new doors are opening, but then we've gone through the new door, but then we're kind of like, oh, hold on, do we actually close that door? Like we need to go back and say, is this the door that we want to make sure it's closed for good, or are we going to leave it open? Like that's the sort of energy that we're in for the next couple of years. And so, come 2026, it's going to be a whole different thing, because these energies are then going to be like in their planets for their next cycles, which are for those outer planets. Like Pluto, we know is going to be there for the next 20 something years. Uranus is going to be there on a 14-year cycle. So there's going to be lots of stuff that's going to be more solidified, say 2026. And I think numerologically, that's actually when the new beginning happens. And 2027 is also really important and potent when we look at things from the gene keys and human design. There's this massive frequency shift in 2027 that has been predicted using the gene keys and how our DNAs and frequencies are actually changing. And so numerologically, we're in an 8-year now. We're going to move into a 9-year, which is all about endings and completions. So that's that threshold. And then 2026 is where, we're kind of in that new energy. We're really going to start to feel that fresh start. Yeah. So that's the macro. But then if we go back to like where we are right now, Gemini season, you're going to feel like if you were feeling a bit stuck and stagnant, or you kind of like in those sort of loops and cycles, Gemini is that adaptable energy. So you are going to feel a bit more of the things starting to shift and change, and you're going to feel a bit more restless and like you want to have that change, because there's going to be a lot of Gemini energy that's amplified with Jupiter being there. And then pretty soon, well, actually, we've already got Venus and Mercury will be coming into Gemini very soon. So we've had, we've got Jupiter there, we've got the Sun, we've got Venus, Mercury will be coming in very soon. And then we're going to have the Gemini new moon on the 5th. So it's going to be lots of Gemini energy and lots of, that's very good, adaptable, flexible energy all around our communication, all around how we're showing up, connecting. It's all around the dualities. So the good, the bad, the light, the dark, that's all going to be expanded and highlighted. So that's where we're at right now. And so I think it's going to be really nice to have that as a bit of a cycle and circuit breaker to kind of change the energy up. And then we build into a beautiful and lovely winter solstice point when the sun moves into Cancer on the 21st of June, which is going to be really beautiful, because I love winter solstice because that actually marks where the sun goes into her full moon. She's just come out of her waning phase. So she had her full moon phase on the summer solstice, where she's at her most radiant and the most light of day. And then as we're building into this, she's like, going into her waning phase, where she's losing light every day until we get to that winter solstice point, which is like the point where she has the least amount of light exposure. This is for us in the Southern Hemisphere. Obviously, it's reversed in Northern Hemisphere. And then from that point, she then has that seeding point of then starting to wax and grow. So the days are becoming to grow, and all the way into that full point in the summer solstice. So I think that's really beautiful to have that helping us build and grow with our light and essence and everything for the seeing at the end of the year. So I think, you are going to notice a shift and a change. So April and May were huge. The energies are still going to be, obviously up and down. We're going to move into another eclipse season in October. So that's going to throw up a few more things again. But overall, like, we will notice this shift. Like, I already can feel the shift from Jupiter moving into Gemini as of late yesterday. I can feel that shift. And so I know that we're all going to start to feel like, we've got that bit more energy. Things are going to speed up a little bit. It's air energy. So air moves very quickly. So it's going to be,
so what I hear too is it's at the benefit of that awareness around the embodiment and looking after the physical self and the grounding aspect, like that whole keeping our feet on the ground as we're reaching up here. Because the Gemini energy it's very fast and it's very quick, and there's that aspect to it of like around mental health and you know, anxiety and feeling disconnected, you know, and because there's so much going on, and that, and so the groundedness in harmony with that, you know, all this beautiful shifting energy that is able to offer us, you know, moving into new spaces, or, you know, into that new room, as you're saying, like, okay, leaving the motel room, checking there's nothing left underneath the bed. Yes, okay, now we're going off on that trip. Let's go. You know, we've left it all behind. It's all done. We've done the work. We've done the shadow work. You know, but you know, the calm, you know, the being able to be in a space physically and energetically where we can cope with the speed of, you know, this quick thinking space that this Gemini energy is bringing us. Yeah.
And the gift really is coming back, like Gemini being the duality. It's like, yes, Gemini rules like the mind, but then the duality of that is the heart. And like we've sort of been speaking about, it's that battle between the heart and the head. And so overall, we know that the heart always will win. Like for our grander, highest good, we always have to come back to that truth. And so that, I guess, is the shadow part, where some people will get really overactive, busy mind, get too caught up of trying to make logical reasoning of potential intuition or intuitive hits that they're getting. They want to make logical reasoning around, like, well, that can't work because X, Y, Z, and, you know, logic, right? But then you also have to trust that that's the divine orchestration of duality, that there is that point of always coming back to that truth and embodying that in the heart and grounding that energy in. So you nailed it with that. It's always about coming back to that.
Beautiful. And I what I just heard you say then too is like not lying to ourselves to make it fit.
Yes. Oh, and that's what Gemini's great. Gemini will cook up, you know, you can bend the truth to whatever suits you. You will try and find logical, rational reasoning to make that suit you and your little white lie or whatever it is. So be aware of that this Gemini season, and with Jupiter here, that can definitely be a highlight.
And I think that's where the thing with the social media, why it's like becoming so obvious, and if you want to say obvious, where you know, where was, you know, there's that huge gravitational pull to like come in and, you know, play the game, because, you know, the Gemini energy is very playful as well. But you know, as you were saying, Joe, cunning, you know, you can be, you know, somewhere where you don't want to be without realizing it. But so, you know, having that you know, that little protective filter there to go, you know, how is this feeling? You know, do I want to be, how do I, you know, like, you know,
being more the observer of how you're feeling, and
and is this working for me, or is this something that, you know, I need to make, you know, have less time in this space, and, you know, really just go, you know, the real life stuff is holding more value for me, and this is where I feel my happiness and my true reward, as opposed to just that.
The simplicity of getting back out, like you said at the very beginning, getting back outside and, you know, sitting on the grass and having the sun warm you and feed you good energy, and not making it a big deal, you know, like letting yourself off the hook. And
having the conversations with people that, like, just again where you were sharing around the Gemini energy, like having conversations with people,
and so that really physical connection of human physical connection. And, you know, in person is best. Yes, technology, like doing what we're doing, that's also great, because you can real time connect with people, and, like, you know, you're still energetically connected in a video call. But at the end of the day, like, nothing beats that human physical touch of connection, of like a hug or what have you. Like, we'll never beat that.
Because I think the thing is to just definitely be out of your head a lot, or really letting what is in your head be moving through, as opposed to that whirring around and just kind of, you know, only the self to bounce against. You know, I think this is where the community aspect as well is, you know, really very important too, like to be tapping into and having that supportive environment.
Definitely. And the other part to that is Mercury rules Gemini, and Mercury can be known as a bit of a trickster. Like, he does like to play tricks, whether that's on our mind, whether that's, you know, in Mercury retrogrades and things like that. You know, he is known as the trickster, and that's part of his shadow too. So we also have to be aware of that, and that, you know, that is just coming back to intuitively trusting. Like, if something doesn't feel right, if someone's telling you something, that information doesn't feel right, trusting that. And to that, you know, if there's something that just doesn't feel intuitively right for you, trust that. That is the biggest piece to hold on to out of everything, is just, you know, if there's something that doesn't, like we said on social media, if it doesn't feel like that rings true, or it's something that's just been auto-generated from AI, whatever it is, trust that and come back to your truth of what feels good for you. Because that's where the medicine is.
Actually, I noticed I doing a post on the Girl Awakening account the other day. There was a thing that came up actually is this AI generated content noted in a caption?
Oh, wow, that's
And
amazing.
I thought, wow, this is
Very much,
fantastic.
yeah.
That's fantastic, because like transparency around
Yeah.
AI generated content, I think it has to be a must, so that people are aware of, you know, the positive aspects of it, but also, you know, the fact that, you know, it is necessarily a real person that's connecting with you to
Yeah.
have on as well.
Yeah.
Love
100%.
that.
Oh, look, we have gone.
Oh, no, so with the Gemini words, the word and the communication, you've been moving into some really crazy places. I'll say crazy, but in a very cool way, with some communication that's coming through for you too, haven't you? Been sharing another language, like, you know, we'll say light language, putting through some information. How's that been for you? Is that for you? Is this part of the shift that's coming through times, or more different?
To be fair, that's actually been part of my being since 2020. I channel it every single day, but I guess the piece around vulnerability and actually sharing that, I think that's where I've really just sort of, that Aries energy, stepping into your power. I was like, you know what? I've got stuff that I know can really help people, and that can actually, these codes need to come out. And it was very much clear that I was to share these codes. And I was like, fuck, this is like, what are people going to think? And like, even my mum and dad, they like see my Instagram and social media posts and they're like, what the fuck are you saying? Language? And I'm like, this is exactly why I didn't want to do this. Like, it's just kind of like, you just have, like, this is part of your gift, and you are such a good channel. And you need to have these transmissions come through. And I was like, okay, I'm not really sure about this. But so I've been sharing a little bit here and there. And it's been, you know, it's really quite vulnerable, and it's really been, I guess, kind of coming back to, you know, it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter. Sorry, that wind's blowing the door.
No, it's not. It's what somebody just came in the room.
That spirit just being like, hey, you know,
just open the door on that space to let more in.
Yes. Yeah, you can't make that up, can you? That's very much thank you, spirit. So that has been something that I've been sharing a bit more of, but I guess I have definitely been keeping that to myself since probably 2020. That sort of started to happen. I've been channeling it every day with my meditations and things, and I guess I think the point for me was that I can be very much in my head, and I wanted to make logical sense of it when it's something that it's a frequency and that you can't really, I mean, yes, I now get to the point where I can have a physical English translation to that, because I made it quite clear with spirit that I was like, okay, you want to move these transmissions and codes, like I need to have some kind of translation for that as well. So that's definitely been coming through a lot more easily as well with those transmissions. But it's been a very interesting journey.
Yeah, I love it.
So what was the activation point, if you don't mind? Do you have like a recognition of like when it first started to sink?
So it's actually kind of funny. So during COVID times, there was this, I don't even know, like people were jumping on Facebook, and there was this big summit, like this spiritual summit for people trying to shift the collective consciousness. And so there was this group, and everyone was jumping on and like sharing their gifts and giving their medicine for free to other healers and things. And so I don't even know where this came about, but it was in some Facebook group that this lady, I was tuning into her transmission that she was sharing. And I was like, don't know what it was, but she was just the next speaker that just came on. And I was like, all right, so I'm listening to this thing. I'm just laying in my bed, you know, just a normal COVID time. You're just kind of laying around on social media, just whatever. Yeah. And so then she was like, okay, I'm going to take you on this little journey and give you this transmission. And I was like, oh, this is weird, like whatever. So I'm, you know, got my headphones in, I'm just listening. And then she started channeling light language. I was like, what the fuck is, like, I'm like, oh, this bitch is a bit crazy. Like, I don't know what this is listening to, but I was kind of, it piqued my interest, and I was kind of like, oh, all right. So I'm listening to this, and then I must have been getting ready to go to bed. And so the transmission finished, and I was kind of like, oh, that's really cool. Never really heard of that. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then that night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and like something was activated within me. I had this massive like activation and purge, and like I immediately just had to run to the toilet and just clear out heaps of energy. I was like, what the fuck happened? Like, it was just so out of the blue and so random. And for like the next couple of days, there was like this feeling of like purging, activation. And I was like, my physical body, like something had shifted. I was like, this is weird. So then anyways, meanwhile, me Googling, what happened? What is light language? Like, am I going through an activation? I'm like, what the fuck? And so logically, I'm trying to make sense of what has happened to me. And I'm like, okay, this is real weird. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know how to explain this to anyone. And then, so I'm kind of like on these, like, what is it? The Reddit forums or things that come up.
Yeah.
You can go in and say, like, okay, someone else experienced this. Okay, cool. It's something to do with the light language. Like it was a code activation, a transmission that had activated within me. So that had happened like really early 2020. And then I remember that like I was like in my meditation and I'd sort of just be like, okay, let's just see if something wants to come through. And then so I started to then channel my own codes. I was like, oh, that was weird. Like that wasn't me. Like I don't know what that was. And so was just sort of playing around with it. And then I met this lady who she's here on the Sunshine Coast. And she does a very beautiful spiritual guide, does lots of different modalities and offerings. And I did a training with her. It was actually my cacao and breath facilitation training. And so as part of that training, she was like activating our light language to come through. And she was like, has anyone done this before? And I was like, yeah, I started to. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so then she like gave me another activation. And I was like, oh, that was powerful. And like from that moment after that activation, it's like every single day it's come through. And it's, you know, it evolves and it's different frequencies that are always coming through. And now like sometimes it can even just be a matter of just like hand frequencies and just pulling the codes in. Like it doesn't always come from voice. Yep. I'm starting to learn that a bit more, but the power and stuff, like even when I'm doing like if I was doing Reiki healings on people, it would start to come through and it would help me clear and shift a lot of energetic debris as opposed to what just the Reiki symbols could do. But this kind of like gave it a supercharged effect. And then even people experiencing that was like, I don't know what you did to me, but like, you know, that activated something called now I'm starting to channel codes or so it's kind of evolved like that. But it was just really interesting how it all, you know, some people have really cool awakening stories, but mine was kind of just like, well, this just happened on social media. And, you know, now.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool.
And that's the beauty of social media is finding your community, finding, you know, you get drawn to something and having that authentic connection as opposed to just the, you know, the blank space. But that, I mean, so the frequency that you're describing, is that like a feeling or is it like a, how does that?
Yeah, I guess it's the frequency of like what comes through my voice. So sometimes with some transmissions, it will be like some humming will come through, or it's like honestly just kind of until you, my voice changes. Like it's not me. Like sometimes I've channeled like really like ancient, really angry, like Native American kind of beings have come through and they get pissed. And like there was a couple of times where they were like really been like I was like, oh my God, like stop yelling at me. So I've channeled it like, yeah, it's really hard to kind of explain, but I guess it's just that embodying when you receive that, it's just being open to receive it. And so now I just come to that point of like, I used to get really fixated on like, who am I channeling? Who is this? Like, and now I know like the main, I guess, galactic, if it comes through as galactic, it's mostly Palladian energies, or the Galactic Federation of Light also comes through quite strongly for me. But I can also, sometimes it will be, if I'm doing a healing for someone, I always like go in to that healing and connect with, I get my guides to connect with their guides and then bring forward anything. So sometimes it will be whatever resonates with them and their guides. So there's been some weird stuff that I wouldn't normally, like it's not familiar in my daily practice if I'm just doing it for me, that will come through. So I guess the gift and the beauty there, and that's one thing that I'm really working with my gift, is that I really can tap in and like sound completely different. And like some things that come through, I'm like, what the fuck? Like some will come through as singing, and I'm a terrible singer, but like I've actually had some things where I'm like, that actually sound pretty good. I actually
that's like what I find is so incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so and I guess this is the vulnerability piece, is like not really understanding or knowing what's going to come through, and I guess being just open to do that in front of people is quite vulnerable, because like, you know, sometimes weird noises and stuff come through and it's like I don't know, it's just I'm just being a vessel of, you know, a channel and a vessel of whatever needs to.
Well, it's all about the frequency of it too, isn't it? Because I mean, I know that when I've listened to, I love light language, and I have for a long time through Wendy Kennedy actually, and she always says just close your eyes and don't even think about, you know,
don't try and make meaning of it. Just
absolutely, just let the frequency seep through you, and whatever activates will activate, and if it's not, it won't. It's like, you know, no, I think it's really powerful. And there are a lot more people doing it, and I feel like that's the
Good
frequency,
thing.
that's lifting the planets. That whole support is lifting the
Yeah.
planet.
And I feel like I'm starting to notice too when there's different transmissions that come through. So some will be like a DNA activation, which are really potent and really powerful. And I can feel those like when they need to come through, versus like just light language, which is just another translation of like soul kind of connection and soul frequency and resonance. Like your soul will understand it. You might not physically understand it, but your soul is resonating at that frequency.
Yeah.
And then versus like a full-on activation, they are two different transmissions, which I've now started to understand and differentiate between like a DNA code or like a cellular activation versus just the light language. So that's one thing that I have noticed, like with some people as well, whether it's like a light language or whether it's different codes. And I guess it's really tricky. And I guess the more that I've done it now for a number of years and each day and understanding the different frequencies of what's coming through, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is an activation or this is actually just a message.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
And so you're developing that, like, that understanding of, like, I guess the way that you would then share the activation or the message that's coming through, you know. Do you feel like just hearing you then, like, have that you're experiencing this or spending time with this each day, do you feel like that is a part of your contribution to the energy, or what is being co-shared, co-created in that space?
Yeah, 100%.
Here on the planet. Yeah,
it's just something that I guess I've been not resisting, like I've let it come through, but I guess not been confident in sharing, because there's so much different stuff. Like people are like, oh, it's just bullshit. And it's like, I really had to kind of detach from that noise that surrounds that, because I know that I'm going to trigger people and, people are going to be triggered by that or whatever. And so I just kind of have to move through that. And I guess that's been a lot of lessons, like especially with where we're at astrologically with that Libra South Node. I didn't think I was a people pleaser, but now I'm realizing I've been like it was just this shadow. Like it was not necessarily in the way that I thought people pleasing was, but it was more around like, I guess I wanted to make others feel comfortable, which I didn't realize that is still more around people pleasing. And I didn't want people to have that in the newsfeed to be like, oh, that's fucking weird, like why is she doing that? So I was thinking about them and not making it about like what spirit or being and like that the right people are going to resonate with that. And I guess when I started sharing that on Instagram and like hearing the people like, oh my God, that just moved something within me, and it was like, okay, all right, like not that I needed the validation, but to a point, like when you are on that vulnerable point of sharing, it's kind of nice to get a little bit of that. But yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how it evolves, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful piece of gold for our listeners and for us to take away. Is that sometimes we can't control the gifts we're going to be given, and how much do you want to be free? How much do you want to contribute to the collective? And sometimes it means putting yourself right out there, and sometimes it means not being liked, and that is totally okay. Yeah,
100%. And it's just like now having that confidence and I guess kind of just being really clear on what's next for me, because this is the thing that I kind of look at. I've got so many different modalities and gifts, and I guess that I've come back to. I do have really good toolkit, but now I'm kind of at this point of like, okay, I made it so clear that I want to be able to bring everything together, but I still don't know what that looks like. How I bring the astrology, how I bring the codes, how I bring my energy work. I'm like, it's slowly, like the more that I'm putting myself out there and the more that I do that, the right people are coming. And so like I've had people come in for like healings where I'll do a reading and then, do some energy healing and then a transmission. And so I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like I can, but it's just like, yeah, I guess the unraveling. And that's just part of my journey here, is to get out of the head and that logical thinking, because I'm very much like, yes, I can be very embodied and very in the heart, but I can also stew, and have a million different processes and a million different tabs going in the head that I'm like, this can't work. Like, so that's part of my journey.
It's about refining it all. That's what I've been finding. It's and working out which one flows.
Oh. Yes. Yeah. Hello, Daisy.
Hi, beautiful. Look at that. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, you want mama?
Yeah, we're gonna let you go.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little hug. And just on that note, just to finish, like having it not be perfect, because I think it is a process. What you're sharing, like just every day, that time sitting in that space for yourself, and at the right time it comes up to be for other people or not or whatever. But at the same point, there's a collective energy happening regardless, isn't it? Oh, little Daisy, hello.
Gorgeous girl.
Thank you for joining us, Daisy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Em, for your authenticity and sharing what's happening galactically.
Is there anything you wanted to add or leave us with, or?
No, I guess it's just everyone just needs to come back to, don't listen to me, trust you, I guess. And that's the same with everything. I guess that's where the noise is going to come. There's going to be a lot of noise, so just trust what feels good and what resonates with you. You're not going to be for everyone. Did you find
She agrees.
Stacey agrees, yeah.
Yeah, that's very powerful, and that's actually probably the best. Oh,
yes.
That's thank you.
She's got her own little light language happening, yeah.
I thought she said, I just want to give you my heart.
Thank you again, Em, for our listeners. We'll put all of Em's details at the bottom of the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Ladies, for this space and for just the work that you do and what you contribute to the world. You guys are amazing.
Oh, thanks, Em.
You.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye, Daisy. Bye.